Welcome to One Word a Day. I'm Sophie, your pilot into the universe of Chinese. Let's keep exploring jiàn made characters. So jiàn, we talked about it for a whole week last week, and I still haven't exhausted the possibilities of jiàn made into another character. So jiàn, a quick review that I translated as a minuscule. That means a small. Smaller than small because we double axe, chop something up into smaller chunks. The left side is bei, pronounced as bei, and we use it separately and made into many Chinese characters whenever there is transaction, monetary sense involved, because bei, the shell, cowrie shell, was the ancient form of currency. And together, small currency means cheap. Very logical, right? So pronunciation also carried over from jiàn, except here is jiàn, fallen tone. So just a quick review of what jiàn is about. You can see the ancient version, we have double axes stacking up together. So that to me means temporally, sequentially axing something down into smaller chunks. We have 小, the small concept, which is visually separating or cutting something in half. That's Chinese small. And now when we show you the action of cutting, use double X, like repeatedly cutting something into small. You can imagine that means even smaller than small. So this very small concept paired with bei. Bei is made of this shape of the shell with the patterns on it. And then the two longer lines, according to some scholars, that's the soft body of the animal used to live within that shell. And also, I guess that's to differentiate another common scene, similar shape of this, that's our eyeball symbol, right? To differentiate that, we add these two dangling bottoms as well. So transaction, currency paired with a very small, cheap. Now, a few examples. 贱卖. Mai means sell. And mai is also made originally with the shell image in it. Here is simplified Chinese that has a head image in it. Totally doesn't make any sense. Like, why selling my head in there? I had that question before, but never thought deep into it because we were kind of lived in the simplified Chinese. All we need to do is to, fulfill the test requirement and to memorize the shape of it. However, the meaning making, the origins of that, we were cut off. And that's my adult me now trying to going back to history to see why this might means sell. Okay, we had a currency in it before, and then we have like a fishnet. So basically, this imagery, the money for fishnet together is a transaction. The two things. One is the product. One is what you use to get that product. Together, it means buy. You try to pay the money for the net. When we add a 10 on top of that, and that's like you try to make money out of it. Therefore, it's 卖, that's sell. So when you cheap sell, that means you sell with a smaller margin. You're trying to sell it cheap to be competitive or whatever reason that you try to get rid of the inventory without the full amount. So that's 贱卖. 贱 here is a comparison to the full regular market value. And when you try to sell it cheap, that's 贱卖. Okay. 卑贱. So if 贱 means small money, means in terms of financial or economic or transactional, the value evaluation is small. 卑 is societal, like socially somebody on the hierarchy of society is on the lower end. Okay, so it's made of imagery, again, simplified, kind of wipe away the tracks of what was before. That the bottom, this cross image, was the three-finger hand symbol. And if you see three-finger hand symbol, kind of like that, kind of you can deform it to form a cross sign. It works structurally, but it's just hard to interpret later on. So three-finger hand symbol below something abstract here. So this was reshaped into that. However, I see one interpretation says it looks like a seed popping out of a shell symbol, but obviously it was not that. There were two hypotheses what that was. One is it's wine container, that the hand pouring wine out of that vessel, and that shows somebody is kind of like in today's word would be catering, right? To serve one, your the masters would eat. And then the second one would be a giant fan, that the hand next to a fan to keep the master cool. So obviously this put somebody in the position as the servant, as somebody on a lower societal rank, that they provide the service, they themselves don't worth much in terms of social status. So that's 卑贱, together the social status versus financial status combined to point to the social status lower rank. So 卑贱 means somebody doesn't make much money and also doesn't matter that much in society in terms of I guess, political power wise. All right, 界内, 内 means enter or inside. So cheap inside. Okay, what that could be? It was an old expression that nowadays nobody uses that anymore. And this person would be regarded as misogynist if that person say, this is my 界内. So this is an ancient version of husband introducing their wife to outsiders. They would say, this is my 界内, meaning my cheap inside person. Okay, so that was how, well, Chinese had a tendency of being humble. They oftentimes linguistically exaggerating how humble they are. Kind of a hypocrisy, right? And then when they referring to their wives, they would use such derogative words, say they are cheap, and that's my insider person, that's inside my household, and use this negative term on them. So there we go. I have to use this because this is probably the cheapest form of something to keep you feeling full, but really low nutrition. Some people may like it, but this is a representation, just use food-wise to illustrate what 界 is about. Thank you for your time. See you another day.